Hi, I'm Lynne Turner Fitzgerald with Your City here on Community Channel 7. My guest today is Billings Police Chief Rich St. John. I'd like to thank you for being with us.
Absolutely, Lynn. Thanks for the invite.
Lots to talk about. And it's been a long time since you and I did an interview.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's been a day or two.
It has. It has.
And here we are.
And lots has gone on, lots changed. So
well, a lot has changed.
Yeah.
And before we started doing the interview, we were talking off camera, and it seems to me that the traditional policing that I guess I grew up with has expanded far beyond the original role. Now you're dealing with mental health, you're dealing with a lot of social issues, and you're being trained for it.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, even today, we are charged with enforcing the law, local, state, and federal. And that is our primary job. Mm-hmm. However, the things that we're dealing with in society, and let's just boil it down to what we're dealing with in Billings, really cross over into a lot of the social issues and some of the problems that we're seeing systemically. So we're seeing the co-occurring mental health addiction issues. We're seeing homelessness. We're seeing transient type behavior. We're seeing people living on the street. Yeah. And our citizens, of course, with nobody or no resources at hand to call, obviously are calling law enforcement. So we become the point of contact on those situations for the citizens. And a lot of times we're the first point of contact with the government for these populations. And so it's incumbent upon us, although it's not entirely in our job description, it has been by default. So we need to be good at what we do. So we have a myriad of training, de-escalation, crisis intervention, and the whole goal for us in these particular settings is to divert these individuals out of the justice system. We know that they don't belong in jail. There's no room anyway.
Right.
And we know that they don't belong in the ER because they're not suffering a life-threatening injury. Mm-hmm. So what do we do with them? And this is the million-dollar question as we work with our partners to try to develop resources across the board, clean and sober housing, affordable housing, jobs, treatment. It's not realistic to send a methamphetamine addict to treatment for 30 days and call them good and turn them loose on the street. They can't get a job, they can't find a place to live. That's a recipe for recidivism, and that's what we see. So a lot of work going on. Now you let me know when I said anything that were about law enforcement, other than this last thing we talked about.
Well, okay, the mental health issue it's countrywide, it's all over, but how do you, as an officer, recognize what you're dealing with? People don't wear signs saying, I'm in crisis, do they? I mean, how do you know?
Well, I think primarily it's by behavior. It's by what they say. And this is the training that we have. It's a 40-hour course on crisis intervention. And it really, it's a tool in the officer's toolbox to allow them to identify someone in crisis, give a layman's assessment of what they might be suffering from, and then try to get them to the resource. This training is done by mental health professionals here in the community. And so in the day, before we had any of this, if I told somebody to do something and they didn't, regardless of what their issues were, they're getting arrested and going to jail.
Right.
And that is not a viable option any longer. Right. And so on the far end of the spectrum, what you see nationwide, we haven't had it here to speak of, is that those situations, if not properly identified, end up in a use of force, and sometimes individuals get killed. And we absolutely don't want that unless it's absolutely necessary. And most of the time, if we can get it diagnosed properly at the front end, then we can avert that.
Some time ago, maybe in the last year or two, and I may be wrong with this statistic, but it seemed to me that there were a group of 80 or 90 individuals that were using up like 90% of the officer's time. Do I have that right?
Yeah, you're absolutely right.
Okay.
Back a few years, we did a study We identified super users, if you will,
Okay.
and it was in the 90s. It was the same individuals that used the vast majority of resources, and it was police, fire, ambulance, and medical. And those were all unfunded. So they put a pen to it, and it was millions and millions and millions of dollars that small group of individuals was costing the taxpayers. So there had to be a better way to deal with it. The only mechanism at that point, if somebody was, passed out downtown in the doorway, is that you got 2 police officers, a fire truck, and an ambulance. And that is not the best use of our resources, especially, in our world where our calls for service continue to increase year after year. We're sitting probably in 71,000 right now, going into the fourth quarter. So we're really busy. Same thing with the firefighters. And so there's a better way to do that. So we brought in a group from San Diego, and they introduced us to the MAP program, Motivated Alcohol Alternative Plan, which essentially is a tool to leverage people into treatment. And it's been pretty successful. We have a few beds that are reserved for diversion. It's basically carrot and a stick, is that, you go to treatment or you're going to sit in jail. If you want to cut all the fluff out of it, that's exactly what it is. And some people are happy to sit in jail, but others are going to, try to get the help.
How successful is that?
I probably would say 50 to 60% on that. And we knew going in, they told us that you're going to have failures, that you'll get people headed in the right direction, and they're going to go back on the street. And for all the reasons I mentioned previously, they're going to fall back into it. So sometimes it takes a little longer. I will tell you, of that original 90, we don't have anywhere near that number. Some have left, some have died. I think there are a handful of success stories out of that.
Good.
But that's an example of the program that initiated with the police department and partnered with the Downtown Business Association,
Right.
And their resource outreach coordinator, which is a civilian that rides along with us, to develop instant rapport with the native populations.
Okay.
Because generally I'm not going to get that. It might take a little while. So a lot of creative work going on, but it's a heavy lift, and it's hard work.
Yeah. And the perception, Chief, is that crime is up in Billings, but in fact it is not.
That is correct. And perception becomes reality, so we work very hard at that, getting the good news out. There is more good going on in Billings than there is bad. The number of people that are causing problems that hit the headlines all the time is a finite number. It's a small number causing a great number of the issues that we're seeing. We have them identified. We're working the problem. But if that's all the citizens see, to lead the story off, then we're facing anarchy, and that is not the case whatsoever. Going back to 2022 and the first half of 23, we've seen double-digit decreases in our crimes against people, and I want to say close to double, but for sure high single percentage decreases in property crime. That, by and large, is because we were able to re-engage the criminal justice system. It pretty much shut down for a while during COVID, and we had people just operating with impunity, and we have very, very difficult time reining them in. Criminal justice system has re-engaged. We're starting to hold people accountable. Got some support from the legislature this year. They reversed some of the questionable decisions on some of the justice reinvestment, where they worked over some of the misdemeanor crimes, shoplifting, for example.
Yeah.
And I think you've heard the stories where people are going in and filling up a basket and just walking out. Nobody will stop them, and it's not of a felony nature, so if we catch them, we give them a citation. And then they don't show up in court, and then they do it again and again and again.
Right.
So we got the justice system, or the criminal justice system, re-engaged. That was helpful. Thanks to the safety levy, not one but two, and the support of the citizens, we were able to add resources to the police department in particular, 12 officers, 12 support staff. We made some internal tweaks that cost zero money for the citizens to make sure that we were properly aligned, that we were as effective and efficient as possible. That was a stipulation to get squared away, get our house in order, to our third party.
That was the public safety levy.
Right, but
Right,
we had a third party come in, Center for Private or Public Safety Management, CPSM, and they studied not only us, the fire department, and I think primarily them, and maybe some other operations, but to make sure we were as efficient and effective as we could be. And so they made some recommendations, and we got some things lined up. Cost citizens nothing. But when we did get to the money, it will require the levy. And there are about 4 or 5 things. And number one was people.
Yes.
Because we don't sell a product, we provide a service.
Right.
And so we need the assets. Surprisingly enough, their recommendation wasn't 24 police officers. It was civilians.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And the civilians, in the light that we can do what the officers are doing. You don't need a sworn police officer for some of the things that we were doing. You can do that with a civilian.
Okay.
So they're cheaper, and we have had incredible success. I just presented awards to the first installment of our community service officer program to the 4 members of 7. We just hired the balance of the 3 for the incredible work they've done just in a year and a half. They have freed up officer hours to be available for 9/11 calls, and have made a major impact in community relations, where before you're waiting hours for an officer or a volunteer,
Right.
which of course isn't efficient nor the best customer service.
Well, does the dispatch have to sort of know who to send to the call?
Yes.
An officer or a civilian?
Yeah, absolutely. So I mean, these are civilians. They're not armed. They don't have arrest authority. So we are not going to put them in any situations that could be hazardous. So a lot of their stuff is cold calls, report. If back in the day, if you picked up the phone, you got an officer. So somebody in the middle of the night broke your car window out. No suspects, witnesses, or evidence. I would come out and take a report, and that was it. Well, that's not good use of a sworn time.
No.
Because now, and so that morphed into having a volunteer call. Well, a volunteer is a volunteer. They may be working that day.
Right.
And so we were seeing, people were getting their information relayed to the department, but it was taking a while. And so now this has really helped bridge that gap. They help on traffic accidents. They direct traffic. They pick up evidence. They write reports. They do follow-up stuff on things that are not deemed to be hazardous.
So your civilian force is a paid force?
Yes.
Is that correct? Okay.
Yeah, so I have that is paid. I have a paid volunteer coordinator, and then the volunteers, of course, are volunteers. We have a volunteer chaplain corps with I don't have a lot of them, but represents quite a few disciplines, if you will. And then that everybody else is on staff. So
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's talk about traffic.
yeah,
Let's talk about traffic. It's frightening to be driving around out there, I gotta say. It's just like people are bold. They have no regard for basic traffic laws. That's my perception. Of course, I'm another driver, so what's with the yellow lights? What's with the red lights?
yeah. We certainly struggle with gaining compliance from some of our drivers. Some people are very good with that. It just seems to me everybody's in a hurry. Our difficulty in enforcing red lights is that the law itself says that you have to enter the intersection on a red light in order to be a violation. So if you enter late on a yellow and it turns red on you when you're in the intersection, that's no foul. So that the closer you get to the yellow, the more red you're going to be in the intersection, and we end up with some problems there. we try very hard to get out anywhere we can. We want to educate and correct behavior, not necessarily write everybody a ticket for their violations. There's a time and place for that. But we hit the driver's ed. I do a lot of PSAs on some things. I mean, we have very, very difficult time, and I would say, probably extremely low, although it's treacherous, is that, their cell phone ordinance. You see people talking on the
Oh,
cell
you do.
phone or texting
Yeah.
all the time. Well,
Yeah.
that's illegal.
I know.
Well, it's illegal in the city, but it's not illegal in the county.
Oh,
And so from jurisdiction to jurisdiction,
Okay.
you'll find some differences. But you just have people that ignore the law, and the issue that I have with that, especially when kids are around, is that you're sending a message. It's okay to pick and choose which rules you
Yeah.
follow. And let's just go to 4th of July. You would not know it, but fireworks are illegal in the city limits. And
tell that to my neighbors.
exactly, yeah, and tell it to my neighbor as well.
Yeah.
And so again, I'm disappointed that you have people that decide, I'm not going to follow that one. It's a stupid law. Well, it might be a stupid law, but your mechanism for that is to address, get the law changed, not just disobey that. And that's me on my soapbox here. But we have a traffic unit. That's all they do is enforce traffic. I heard them in a school zone on the way over here. So they're working very hard to make sure our kids are safe, coming and going. It's every officer's duty to enforce the law as part of their job description. However, if we only go to work with 9 for whatever reason, because we have vacations or sickness
Yeah.
or attrition, they're running from call to call. Like I said, right now we're probably at 70,000 plus calls for service. Nobody in the state of our sister cities comes close to the number of calls that we handle.
Really.
We are truly the only urban center in a rural state, so we're seeing some of those
Yeah.
issues. So we get to it when we can. I think probably the biggest frustration with me, just aside from some of those things, are the reckless motorcycles that they try to get us to chase them. They're up
They
and down.
do?
Oh yeah, they
Really?
try to bait us. They are up and down Shiloh. They're up and down Monad, 100 miles an hour. They've got their cameras or whatnot. I mean, it's reckless. It's dangerous. Several of them have been killed this year for that type of behavior. And I would think that our admonitions and the fact that we're having some fatalities would slow some people down. But I mean, here we are at midnight with your window open, and you can hear them up and down
Oh,
the
yeah.
street. So
You can-
we'll keep after that. But that's something that affects everybody.
Oh, sure.
It
Absolutely.
really affects everybody.
Well, now, do you keep track of crashes, motor vehicle crashes?
Yes, we do.
What are we looking at? Are we increasing as we go along with crashes within the city?
So what I look at is we have our fair share of fender benders and non-injury accidents. What I look at are the injury accidents, whether that number's up or down, and the number of DUI accidents.
Okay.
Those are the ones that I'm looking at. And if I recall that our injury accidents were down the first half, don't quote me on that, I have to take a look. And then DUI, of course, and that how many people are out there drinking and driving. We know we're not catching them all, despite our best efforts, and so we want to make a good effort there. The one thing I will say is there's a lot of critics about the roundabouts, a lot of complaints. People can't navigate, so on and so forth, except for some of the reckless drivers or those who might be intoxicated who run into the middle of it and hit it at 100 miles an hour. We've eliminated right angle accidents.
Yeah.
And the right angle accidents is where people get killed or seriously injured.
Right.
And so, yeah, it's annoying if they're in the wrong lane, but your accidents are at an angle and they're at a sharp angle. So we very rarely have an injury come out of a roundabout accident. That being said, there's work to be done. I mean, there's rules, and some people find it very easy. Some people find that it's a challenge to maintain your Shiloh speed, for example, when you go through that, when in fact there is a there is a speed limit entering
Yeah.
and exiting. So those are all things that we deal with on the side,
Yeah.
you know, trying to educate people and bring them into compliance on their own. But we write a fair number of tickets. You know, unfortunately, there's some wrecks. Unfortunately, we have some fatalities
Yeah.
here. A lot of them are motorcycles in the summer. We had pedestrians hit, things of that sort.
Right. Well, I'm wondering about the insurance industry, and that you may not get into that, but if a community suddenly has a lot of accidents that require insurance repayments, can they look at a town and say, your rates are going up?
I'm sure they could. I would just, you know, relate that to hailstorms on,
Yeah.
you know, when you get half of the city's roofs wiped out. I think they can do that. What we see is that the state of Montana and the national, or I should say the Montana Highway Traffic Safety will look at that and they will go, you've got a problem intersection. What's going on? Is it a design issue? Is it a compliance issue? Those type of things. And so we've had that happen before when something pops up and it's like, what's really going on here? And sometimes we do find that.
That's good, though, to have other eyes on it.
Absolutely. Well,
You
the
know.
stats have to go to the state. And so I'm sure that they've got something or someone that looks at it and go, well, there's a inordinate number of accidents at this one particular intersection. So, I mean, it's a phone call from their traffic engineer to our traffic engineer to the police department to look and say, what is it that, you know, that's contributing? Whether is it a bad hill? You know, does it need to be a traffic signal versus a stop sign? Those are the things that,
Right.
are all considered when we find a problematic area.
Now, let's talk about staffing. What are you currently staffed at?
Our actual numbers as we speak are 158 sworn officers.
Okay.
Okay, we are authorized 167. That is our hard ceiling as set by our budget, which the city council approves. We're in much better shape than some of our other sister cities that are struggling to hire people.
Oh, good.
I don't have any problems getting people in the front door. I don't just check boxes to hire people. It is a very stringent and strenuous process because we only hire A+ people. You get an A+ product out the back end, and I think it's when you start looking at what's taken place here over the last few years, some of the outcomes, that proves out. We just have outstanding officers that are being brought in. And so, yeah, 157 with an absolute constant rolling hiring process. Our staff is pretty good about recruiting a mix of what we call post-certified police officer standards training, which means that they've been a police officer somewhere.
Oh,
You have to be licensed to be a cop in the country. So what that means for us is that they've already been to an academy. Our academy is 12 weeks. I know some that are upwards to 22 months or 22 weeks up to a year.
Yeah.
So it takes that right off the top of the training, and they just go right into field training to learn the BPD way. And once they do that, then they're out on their own. So what that means is that I have an officer on the street operating efficiently and effectively on their own, which helps that staffing issue.
Yeah.
That being said, we get some wonderful candidates that have never been officers. And so the thing there,
It's worth it, though, to invest the time.
absolutely,
in those
yeah,
people,
I don't want to load up with just post-certified people
Right.
because I'm going to miss some good candidates, some really good candidates. And so we, usually if when we have a hiring panel seated, you'll probably see a couple that are post-certified, and then the balance of them will be non.
Okay.
The thing that hinders us is it takes a long time to do a background investigation.
Right.
Takes a couple weeks per candidate, and then there's only a handful, maybe 4 basic academies here in Montana a year. So to try to time out when we hire our new guys and send them to the academy. Now keep in mind, every other department in the state's doing the same thing.
Right.
So their classes are 40, 50, 60 individuals, to get through the academy. So, but it's good. I'm pleased where we're at. Our civilian staff It's probably another 45 or so. That includes our support services, which essentially handles our clerical, our evidence technicians, our crime scene technicians, and the smallest division in the city would be our animal control.
Oh.
There are 7 in that division to handle all things animal in the city of Billings, and so they do a great job there. And
Yeah.
as you're well aware, people are pretty passionate about their animal and not so passionate about yours, depending
Well,
on
that's
what
right.
it's doing. So
That's right.
they definitely earn their money. So that puts us about 200 or so personnel for the PD.
Good.
Second largest in the city behind Public Works. So
All right. Well, thank you. We've run out of time.
yes,
We've got a lot more to cover, so we'll have you back. All right.
we'll have new stuff.
Yeah, okay. Again,
you.
thank you. And thank you for joining us on Your City. We'll see you next time.